This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.
Hi, my name is Pamela Fuselli, and I'm the host of Popping the Bubble Wrap. Are you the person in your family who worries about the safety of others, about buying safety products and using them? Are you yelling, "Yes, that's me"? This is the podcast for you. Raising a child or children can be a hair-raising undertaking, and keeping them safe is a priority. Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast explores what you really need to think about as a parent or caregiver, and provides easy tips on prevention strategies. No bubble wrap here, though. When we think about preventing injuries, we might think, bubble wrap, keep everyone safe by wrapping them up and away from any harm. But that's not the best way to prevent injuries. You don't have to stop living to stop injuries. Injuries aren't inevitable, and their impact overall is a lot greater than most people know. Did you know that injuries are the number one cause of death for Canadians ages 1 to 44? Those people fell, were poisoned, were in a motor vehicle crash. Are you surprised? So how do we change this? By embracing proven ways to prevent serious injuries. You wouldn't jump out of a plane without a parachute. Think of this podcast as the parent's parachute. The good news is that almost all injuries are preventable. You just need to use the right parachute. Joining me today are Jenna, Mandy, and Stephanie. Thanks for being part of Parachute's Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast.
Thank you.
There are different places where injuries can occur, at home, at play, on the road. And I know you all can think of examples in your own families of the types of injuries that you want to avoid. Maybe we can start with Jenna. Can you tell me a bit about your family and what types of things that you worry about the most?
Sure. So in our family, we have our daughter and twin boys, and we're now in that kind of pre-teen tween stage. So we've moved on from those little toddler tumbles that you worry about, and now it's more those bigger, I'm worried about broken bones. I'm worried about, having to navigate the systems if something does happen. And, a lot of it is that the uncertainty around what my kids will get up to as they have more independence, and we're not necessarily right there to see what happened, to know how it could have been prevented or how best to deal with it, whether it's, a minor scrape or something really serious. There's that extra worry that comes with them gaining some independence.
What they can do changes quickly.
Yes, and what they think they can do.
Right. Mandy, can you introduce us to your family and some of the things that are on your mind about, preventing injuries?
Absolutely. So I am mom to two. I have a daughter who is 5 and my son is 3. So a little bit younger than Jenna. And I'm in the stage right now where my concern is their awareness of what's going on around them as well too. So, playing on their bike and noticing whether a car is coming or, jumping off of something. My daughter is very confident with her physical ability. She always has been since a very young age. So I quickly learned that bubble wrapping her wasn't going to happen. I needed to figure out how to, let her explore, let her learn, let her be adventurous and have fun, but how to keep her safe and what I needed to worry about and didn't. I see moms that come around her all the time gasp when she does something, and I don't because I've gotten comfortable with it. But right now it's helping them understand what's going on around them, making sure that they recognize what they're able to do and their surroundings, and keeping them safe in that way. So, encouraging them to wear their helmets when they're supposed to, but not worrying when they, fall off their bikes and don't hurt themselves as well too. So, scaling back that reaction to jump or to get scared when when they fall or they hurt themselves, and trying to prepare them and myself as well too for, what I really need to worry about with them. And right now it's really, trying to combat what they think they're able to do and what they are able to do, and being aware of the surroundings around them.
Stephanie, I'm sure some of this sounds familiar to you as well.
Yeah, very much.
what are the types of things that bring you, pause for thought in terms of their safety?
Well, like Mandy, I have a 3-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl and a 3-month-old. Now, the 3-month-old, he's not getting into too much lately, but the 6-year-old has really started to climb trees a lot lately, and she wants to go higher and higher, and she is extremely confident, but my heart, I do the internal gasp, I call it, where I'm not letting her I'm not showing her that I'm nervous because I don't want to put that on her, right? I want to let her experience these things herself. And then her 3-year-old brother wants to do everything she's doing. So I have to kind of, I'm within arm's reach of him just because his footing isn't quite as sure as the 6-year-old. But I'm still letting him do these things because I want him to build the confidence that he sees his sister have.
Yeah, you've touched on a couple of things that, make, the assessment of the potential for injury important is around that child development piece about the changing ages and, how especially when they're really young, they cannot do something one day like crawling or walking and then the next day they can. So their ability changes, and I'm sure you turn around and think, oh my goodness, how did you learn how to do that already? Mm-hmm. So what are some of the strategies, and I'll just open it up to all of you, that you've taken? You talked a little bit, Stephanie, about, for one of your children keeping within arm's reach, others letting them go a little bit farther. How do you decide how you will approach each of the kids? Because I'm sure they're different in terms of their, personalities and their abilities and things like that.
I think you just watch their confidence levels. I mean, if you see fear in their face, then you can be that encouraging person who's there telling them, hey, you're doing a great job. Or do you feel a little bit nervous right now? Maybe we come down one more bridge, or maybe we aren't going to go on the great big slide today, but we'll go on the middle ground slides. Or, there's, your own child after watching them so much that their confidence level. For me, that's at least how it is.
Absolutely. I think I learned very quickly with Amelia, my daughter, that I had to trust her judgment a little bit. And when things go wrong, one of my biggest tools is talking about it afterwards. So an example I can use is she decided once she was going to hop up the stairs like a bunny and rolled about halfway down there. And so I was right behind. She was totally fine. But talking afterwards about, what could we have done differently? Maybe the stairs are not the right spot to hop up there. But also giving her a little bit of freedom to make some mistakes and figure out, what her body is capable of doing, and giving her the opportunity to reflect on those things. So, we don't hop up the stairs anymore. But as you said about your son too, who's 3, it's a fun age, 3.
Yes.
He's right behind her. He wants to do it, whether she's falling down the stairs or not. He's like, yep, let's go. And his abilities are different. And I've had to learn quickly that what works for one doesn't work for the other. But also, like you said, not hindering his ability to learn and explore the same way that I allowed her to. So kind of taking a step back and saying, like, while I'm having that internal gasp and being like, oh my God, I'm not okay with this, stepping back and being like, okay, if you think you've got this, let's go.
Yeah, it's good to find those kind of moments too, where you can find that transition piece, right? Of saying, like, you know what, before we try the big slide, did you see this one over here? This one looks awesome. And it just happens to be a little bit smaller. We don't have to say that last part. We just know, like, oh, let's try ourselves here, see how we do. And then we convince both of us that, sure, yeah, we could try the big one this time. Or maybe that's something that, I used to do that a lot at the playgrounds with the kids when they were younger, was kind of judge what other kids were there. And it was much easier to let my little kids kind of explore their freedom if we managed to visit a playground when it wasn't busy and full of bigger kids, because then you knew that they had the space and the room. And if they got scared, it was going to be easier to go and help them if you needed to, rather than, the few times that we were in busier playgrounds and they'd kind of take off and you could see just how tiny they were next to the bigger kids. And you don't know those other kids. You don't know if they're going to be the kind that's going to help, or they're the kind that are just going to elbow yours out of the way. And so, yeah, finding those little kind of like transition steps, I found was really useful. And I'm still trying to do that now as they're getting older. And it's like, okay, well, sure, you can go this far on your bike without me right there, or you can do this much, or, finding those stepping stones. And now that the kids are older, having those conversations like you're having, Mandy, too, of saying, okay, great. So we're going to try this. Here's my expectation of what you're going to do. And if you meet this, then we can move on to the next step of you're able to do this next thing that might, scare us all a little bit.
That's like running ahead. My daughter, when she was in the, my son was still in the stroller and she wanted to go ahead as well too. We had a lot of conversations about the stop signs or where to stop. So, you run ahead, but you're going to stop at the stop sign. You're going to stop at the tree or whatever these things were. So she still got the opportunity to, run free and feel like she was a big girl. But then I also knew when I could, if I had to yell because we've gone past the stop sign or past this. And it is funny too, because I feel like with my little guy, I'm like, a little bit more. I'm not sure if he knows what he's looking for when he's going there, right? So how do I navigate then that he's not comprehending the same, like a spatial awareness as well too, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, you all have more than one child. How different was it from the first child to your second, or now even your third? For the first child, where you just like, where's the bubble wrap? I need to keep this child safe. How has it shifted over the years?
I'll jump in first since mine are older.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, there wasn't a lot of time between having just one and then having three. Our daughter wasn't 2 yet when our twins were born. And I think that actually kind of helped not have that bubble wrap experience, because I just couldn't. I had 3 of them to try to keep my eyes on. And thankfully for us, you see that personality come out pretty early, and our daughter is very mature in her thinking. She does have that sense of awareness of the space around her. And even from an early age, I could trust her not to do too many things that she shouldn't do. And I could give her a little bit more freedom and even get her involved in helping take care of her brothers. And, okay, we need to move these up because babies will put that in their mouth. And, those little things, she would understand those concepts, where even now that my boys are 9 and our niece is coming over, I'm like, I don't know that they get that now. There's such a different, each kid is so different, but I find a big difference between our daughter and our boys. And I don't know if it's, my mother-in-law always says it has to do with gender. I don't know if that's the case, but definitely their personalities are so different. And I have a lot more faith in our daughter's ability to look around and, understand what a stop sign means. We live out in the country. There's a stop sign at the end of our road, but when we go into the city, I get very nervous around my kids. That's one of the times when I still feel very nervous, even though my kids are old enough that they should know these things. They don't see crosswalks enough to know exactly how you're supposed to use them. Whereas, kids growing up in the city at a much younger age have that innate ability. And so there's those differences too, that where you live really kind of impacts different things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what their experiences are and how familiar they are with those types of environments. You're right. Yeah. Stephanie, I'm sure you have some changes between your first and your 3-month-old now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first one, I pretty much did bubble wrap her. It was like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. And we lived in town, the city then. So, it was even more like, now I live on an acreage, and I let the 3-year-old and 6-year-old go outside and play together, because I know the 6-year-old is mature enough to say, don't do that, because I have to nurse a baby on the couch, right? I have to take care of this little fella who can't do anything for himself yet. So I let the responsible 6-year-old take care of the 3-year-old, and maybe some people would frown at that, but I live in the country. I know that she is so responsible. He isn't, though. He likes to push his boundaries. He likes to push his limits. He likes to come in and say, Maya's not letting me do this or not letting me do that. And I'll say, well, she knows what you're able to do. So she's just making sure that you're safe. So there was a huge difference. And there is such a huge learning curve for me with the first. And then the second, it was just kind of like, well, I'm just going to let him do it because I don't have time to really, grab on to everybody all at once. And now with 3, even less so. So I do let my 6-year-old take care of the 3-year-old outside sometimes. But, that's part of the childhood experience for them. And I really hope that it helps him. It has helped him. It's given him so much more confidence too. So it's really neat to watch them grow and progress and learn their own safety. They come in with bumps and bruises all over them. And like I was saying, she's now doing the climbing of the trees. So she comes in all proud because she's all scratched up and covered in bruises. And she's like, look, this is a new bruise today. I'm like, perfect. That is the look we're going for right now.
Yeah, you've hit on something really important, and that parachute, promotes is we're not trying to stop the bumps and bruises. We're not we're not, those are part of learning and growing and developing. It's the serious injuries, the ones that are fatal or serious, that we know can be prevented and don't really contribute to that development necessarily, right?
Yeah.
Mandy, this, you're shaking your head. It sounds very familiar.
It does. And again, like Jenna said, I don't know if it's gender. I don't know if it's age. I'm not sure. My gap was a little bit bigger. I had a little over 2 years between the two of them. But Amelia, from a very young age, was very confident in her body, very strong as well, too. We joke she's enjoyed core strength since she was a baby. She actually gave herself a belly button hernia as a baby because she was always trying to crunch up. And so as much as I wanted to bubble wrap at points, I really wanted to make sure that I didn't, hinder this ability and this confidence that she had. It's a remarkable thing. I really enjoy that, watching and seeing that go. And I always say, I hope that doesn't go anywhere because it's such a great quality that she has, but it made me as a mom really need to look at that as a positive thing and try not to hinder it. So Stephanie, the trees, oh my gosh, we have trees everywhere and she loves them. So like you said, we don't want to prevent her from learning and figuring things out and getting bumps and bruises, because I think bumps and bruises are part of childhood too. Remember that time you slipped and did this or this bump from here? But giving them that confidence and, like I said, conversations as well too. So, and I have a fenced in backyard, and that's been a blessing because I feel comfortable letting them go outside. I let them in the backyard. It's completely fenced in at this point. But like you said, Amelia's got it figured out. She's good. I can be in the kitchen cooking while she's outside playing and worry very little about what she's doing. Theodore is outside and it's a whole other ball game. I'm constantly looking over the window and still trying to keep it in, but very much hovering a little bit more with him, but trusting that she's able to do it.
Well, I think, this is really important for other parents to hear your experiences, because I think they will share some of them. And if they don't, I think you've given them some really good advice and good, examples of how you may start off in one way, and as you learn about your child and what environment they're living in and playing in, that, you can make adjustments, and how important it is to know your child, but also the environment that they're in and their experience with it. And I think you've demonstrated so well that the concept that we want to get across, that, you don't have to bubble wrap your kids. In fact, injury prevention and bubble wrapping do not go together. There are ways, to allow kids to really embrace life and all of the things that they love to do, but while keeping them safe. So thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your thoughts and your stories, and thanks for sharing them with everyone.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great to hear from you both as well.
Make parachute.ca your go-to for up-to-date, evidence-based information on injury prevention and safety. From preventing burns and scalds to winter outdoor safety, check out parachute.ca.
It's time to open your parachute.
Dr. Mariana Bressoni is the Director, Human Early Learning Partnership at UBC and investigator at BC Children's Hospital Research Institute. She studies child injury prevention and children's outdoor play. Her research looks at the influence of parents, outdoor environments, as well as policies to promote children's outdoor play. Welcome, Mariana, to Popping the Bubble Wrap podcast, and thanks for joining me.
It's a delight to be here, Pam. Thanks for including me.
There was a very interesting conversation with the group of parents that, are concerned about safety in their homes, at play, on the move. You've worked with a lot of parents with similar concerns. What did you take away from their conversations that was consistent or different from what, the conversations you've had with parents about not bubble wrapping their kids?
It was really consistent with what we've heard from other parents. And what we generally hear from parents is this struggle, really, to figure out that balance between keeping their kids safe and letting them take risks. And that's understandable. We want what's best for our kids, but at the same time, we have these fears around the things that can happen to them. And so sometimes it's hard for parents to let go and to let their kids try things out if they're afraid that something's going to happen or that somebody's going to think that they're a bad parent for letting something happen. So really heard those kinds of themes with the parents and also heard the efforts that they're making to try and allow for more freedom amongst their kids, recognizing the diversity of what their kids are capable of. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, that they, adapt and make changes depending on the child as well as where they are. They feel safer in their backyards, for example, than they might say in public playground or places like that. And so all of that makes sense. There isn't one size fits all solutions, and we have to take contexts and children into account in our decision making.
I love the parents that one of them talked about, their internal gasp of like, oh, my heart, of, when they saw their kids taking a bit of risk, doing things that maybe weren't in their comfort level, but they were confident in their kids' ability to assess what they wanted to do. So I was pretty impressed with their approach, as you said, to, really knowing their kids and what they're able to do and, letting them have a little freedom.
Well, and being willing to keep that gasp inside, right, and not let it out, because it can be so hard for kids to hear that, or be careful, and how undermining that can be to kids who think that they're just kind of tootling along, trying things out, and then hear from a parent, be careful, and feel like, oh, did I miss something? Don't they trust me to keep myself safe, and that sort of thing. So kudos to the parents for recognizing the importance of keeping those thoughts in rather than expressing them.
One of the things that we struggle with is that, injuries are the leading cause of death for Canadians aged 1 to 44. So those all kids fall into that. And we know the solutions to help keep kids safe, whether they're riding in a car or playing outside or living in their home space. Can you talk a little bit about, your experience in balancing, as an injury prevention practitioner we know that this is a big issue. How do we balance that, addressing that? And we also often get, when we're talking about injury prevention, there's also this assumption that what we want to do is have kids not do things, to bubble wrap them. But that, in fact, is not the case, right?
So I guess that there's a couple of important things to think about. First of all, as you point out, injuries are the leading cause of death. But when we dig into the injury statistics, outdoor play is not one of those causes of kind of major serious or injury or death. And so our responses can be disproportionate to the threat. Actually, the likelihood of serious injury is very, very low. And play spaces in general are designed in such a way that they keep that likelihood down. So we can really give our kids freedom in those situations. But then, of course, you have kids in other situations. Maybe you're going on a walk somewhere else or in the forest or whatever. And so it's also important to think about different kinds of risks and hazards that are apparent in different situations. And so we encourage parents to think about themselves as a prepared adventurer. right? So wanting to go on those adventures and being open to those adventures and all of the wonderful things that kids get out of those experiences, but thinking ahead, a little bit of preparation in terms of, okay, what do I know about this setting? What are the things I might need to be careful or aware of in this particular setting, so that I can take care of those things that might cause more serious injury, so that my child can actually be free to explore and get out there, and be able to just kind of test their limits, and I don't feel like something serious is going to happen.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think there's different levels of where we see prevention strategies coming in. There's that parent level of, assessing their child and knowing what their kid is capable of. And then there's the environment that they're functioning in. So whether that's a playground structure or the forest or walking to school or biking to school, and what they have to be aware of in those types of environments. When you think about, who has control over some of these solutions, what's your experience in working with places like municipalities or those that actually have decision and responsibility for the environments that kids are playing and, moving about in?
By and large, municipalities are concerned about this issue, and they want to, say, support active transport to school and for kids to be able to engage in this kind of thing. But what we've seen over time is that there's been a kind of increasing focus on cars, moving cars through cities and the prioritizing cars in the municipal planning. We're seeing a move away from that now, but of course we have all this infrastructure that is focused on cars and not people. And so parents have to think about what's the environment that their kid is interacting with. Parents are going to know that better than anyone, and they're going to know their child and their child's capabilities better than anyone. So they really are in the best position to consider the factors of the environment and the kinds of supports they might need to put in place so that their child, say, can walk to school and kind of build their skills towards maybe walking to school on their own. So it really depends.
Yeah, I think there's different levels of responsibility and being able to hear from parents and kids themselves, what environments they are looking at. I mean, I know you've done some work with kids themselves about assessing, where they go to play or why they go one place and not the other, and, what their routes to school look like. That input is really important to understand how children are interacting with their environment and that they're a stakeholder in this environment that they're living in.
Absolutely. We want to keep kids and their perspectives at the center of how we design our cities. When we design cities with kids at the center, the cities are actually better for all of us. All of us like living in it more. All of us are able to appreciate our environments more. And it's actually also more sustainable, from a climate perspective. And so we really do want to center children's perspectives. And we also want to recognize that they are very capable and competent. We have this kind of tendency towards assuming that we need to step in and kind of do things for them and kind of control and decide for them. And really, we need to kind of step back from that, realize that children are capable of speaking for themselves, even very young children, and we just need to provide the supports to make sure that their voices are heard.
Do you remember some of the examples that the kids came up with what they'd like to see on their routes to school or to the playground?
Yeah, they talked about a few different things. So first of all, they really wanted to feel safe with the people around them, right? So the idea of eyes on the streets, lots of people on the streets and that comfort with people on the streets. They wanted to see robust pedestrian infrastructure, right? So not only sidewalks, which are of course important, but calm streets so you don't have kind of traffic moving at high speed. And then they also wanted interesting things to interact with or to go to, right? So little shops that were interesting to them, or even ways of getting around that supported play, right? So not just kind of walking or biking, but maybe, jumping or sliding or, really letting their imagination shape the play. And they wanted places that they could hang out with their friends, that they could play with their friends, that they could kind of feel like it was their own and reclaim as their own and put their stamp on it, so that they had ownership and agency in that space.
Yeah, their contributions are really important because it's not necessarily the way that an adult, once we get older and some of that play comes out of our own lives, that we may not see the environment the same way that kids do. So I think, because they are a big part of the people who are using the spaces, and we don't often think about having or how to get their input, I think that's really important. So thanks so much for joining me today. I mean, I think the conversation with our parent group was really inspiring in terms of how they're approaching their children and making sure, really being aware of that balance that needs to take place. And I hope that that conversation and our conversation today, Mariana, has given other parents some permission to, keep the gasp inside and let their kids really enjoy and take part in the world that's around them. So thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks so much, Pam.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Popping the Bubble Wrap is a podcast of Parachute, Canada's national injury prevention charity, whose mission is for Canadians to live long lives to the fullest by preventing serious and fatal injuries. We release episodes every 2 weeks. Next episode, I'll be talking about the worst advice your parents gave you. Help us reach parents and caregivers by sharing this link with your friends and family and giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more information, visit us at parachute.ca. Have a question? Write to us at poppingthebubblewrap@parachute.ca. You can also leave a message at 647-776-5123. That's 647-776-5123.
Popping the Bubble Wrap is produced for Parachute by Story Studio Network and Eye Contact Productions.
This is Story Studio Network.